Katha Sarit Sagara.
OR. Ocean of the Streams of Story. Part 1. Chapter I. May the dark neck of Siva, which the god of love has, so to speak, surrounded with nooses in the form of the alluring looks of Parvati reclining on his bosom, assign to you prosperity. May that victor of obstacles, who after sweeping away the stars with his trunk in the delirious joy of the evening dance, seems to create others with the spray issuing from his hissing mouth, protect you. After worshipping the goddess of speech, the lamp that illuminates countless objects, I compose this collection which contains the pith of the Bṛhatkatha. The first book in my collection is called Kathapitha, then Koni's Kathamukha, then the third book named Lavanaka, then follows Zaravahanadittajanana, and then the book called Chamlarika, and then Madana Manchuka, then the seventh book named Klatna Prabha, and then the eighth book named Surya Prabha, then Alankaravati, then Satyasas, and then the 11th book called Vela, then comes Sasankavati, and then Madhavivati, then comes the book called Paneha followed by Mahabhisheka, and then Saratamanjari, then Pidnuivati, and then will follow the 18th book Vishamasila. This book is precisely on the model of that from which it is taken. There is not even the slightest deviation, only such language is selected as tends to abridge the prolixity of the work, the observance of propriety and natural connection, and the joining together of the portions of the poem so as not to interfere with the spirit of the stories, are as far as possible kept in view. I have not made this attempt through desire of a reputation for ingenuity, but in order to facilitate the recollection of a multitude of various tales. There is a mountain celebrated under the name of Himavat, haunted by Kinnaras, Gandharvas, and Vidyadharas, a very monarch of mighty hills, whose glory has attained such an eminence among mountains that Bhavani, the mother of the three worlds, deigned to become his daughter. The northernmost summit thereof is a great peak named Kailasa, which towers many thousand yojanas in the air, and as it were, laughs forth with its snowy gleams. This boast, Mount Mandara, did not become white as mortar even when the ocean was churned with it, but I have become such without an effort. There dwells Maheshwara, the beloved of Parvati, the chief of things animate and inanimate, attended upon by Gyanas, Vidyadharas and Siddhas. In the upstanding yellow tufts of his matted hair, the new moon enjoys the delight of touching the eastern mountain yellow in the evening twilight. When he drove his trident into the heart of Andhaka, the king of the Asuras, though he was only one, the dart which that monarch had infixed in the heart of the three worlds was, strange to say, extracted. The image of his toe-nails being reflected in the crest jewels of the gods and Asuras made them seem as if they had been presented with half-moons by his favor. Once on a time that Lord, the husband of Parvati, was gratified with praises by his wife, having gained confidence as she sat in secret with him. The moon-crested one, attentive to her praise and delighted, placed her on his lap, and said, "What can I do to please thee?" Then the daughter of the mountain spake, "My lord, if thou art satisfied with me, then tell me some delightful story that is quite new." And Siva said to her, "What can there be in the world, my beloved, present, past, or future, that thou dost not know?" Then that goddess, beloved of Siva, importuned him eagerly because she was proud in soul on account of his affection. Then Siva, wishing to flatter her, began by telling her a very short story, referring to her own divine power. Once on a time Brahma and Narayana, roaming through the world in order to behold me, came to the foot of Himavat. Then they beheld there in front of them a great flame linger. In order to discover the end of it, one of them went up, and the other down, and when they could not find the end of it, they proceeded to propitiate me by means of austerities, and I appeared to them and bade them ask for some boon. Hearing that Brahma asked me to become his son, on that account he has ceased to be worthy of worship, disgraced by his overweening presumption. Then that god Narayana craved a boon of me, saying, "O revered one, may I become devoted to thy service." Then he became incarnate, and was born as mine in thy form, for thou art the same as Narayana, the power of me all-powerful. Moreover, thou wast my wife in a former birth. When Siva had thus spoken, Parvati asked, How can I have been thy wife in a former birth? Then Siva answered her, Long ago to the Prajapati Daksha were born many daughters, and amongst them thou, goddess. He gave thee in marriage to me, and the others to Dharma and the rest of the gods. Once on a time he invited all his sons-in-law to a sacrifice. But I alone was not included in the invitation. Thereupon thou didst ask him to tell thee why thy husband was not invited. Then he uttered a speech which pierced thy ears like a poisoned needle. Thy husband wears a necklace of skulls, how can he be invited to a sacrifice? And then thou, my beloved, didst in anger abandon thy body, exclaiming, This father of mine is a villain, what profit have I then in this carcass sprung from him? And thereupon in wrath I destroyed that sacrifice of Daksha. Then thou wast born as the daughter of the mount of snow, as the moon's digit springs from the sea. Then recall how I came to the Himalaya in order to perform austerities, and thy father ordered thee to do me service as his guest, and there the god of love who had been sent by the gods in order that they might obtain from me a son to oppose Tarka, was consumed, when endeavoring to pierce me, having obtained a favorable opportunity. Then I was purchased by thee, the enduring one, with severe austerities, and I accepted this proposal of thine, my beloved, in order that I might add this merit to my stock. Thus it is clear that thou wast my wife in a former birth. What else shall I tell thee? Thus Siva spake, and when he had ceased, the goddess transported with wrath, exclaimed, Thou art a deceiver, thou wilt not tell me a pleasing tale even though I ask thee. Do I not know that thou worshippest Sandhya, and bearest Ganga on thy head? Quote. Hearing that, Siva proceeded to conciliate her and promised to tell her a wonderful tale, then she dismissed her anger. She herself gave the order that no one was to enter where they were. Nandan thereupon kept the door, and Siva began to speak. The gods are supremely blessed, men are ever miserable, the actions of demigods are exceedingly charming, therefore I now proceed to relate to thee the history of the Vidyadharas. While Siva was thus speaking to his consort, there arrived a favorite dependent of Siva's, Pushpadanta, best of Gyanas, and his entrance was forbidden by Nandan who was guarding the door. Curious to know why even he had been forbidden to enter at that time without any apparent reason, Pushpadanta immediately entered, making use of his magic power attained by devotion to prevent his being seen, and when he had thus entered, he heard all the extraordinary and wonderful adventures of the 7 Vidyadharas being narrated by the trident-bearing god, and having heard them he in turn went and narrated them to his wife Jaya, for who can hide wealth or a secret from women? Jaya the doorkeeper being filled with wonder went and recited it in the presence of Parvati. How can women be expected to restrain their speech? And then the daughter of the mountain flew into a passion, and said to her husband, Thou didst not tell me any extraordinary tale, for Jaya knows it also. Then the Lord of Uma, perceiving the truth by profound meditation, thus spake. Pushpadanta employing the magic power of devotion entered in where we were, and thus managed to hear it. He narrated it to Jaya, No one else knows it, my beloved. Having heard this, the goddess exceedingly enraged caused Pushpadanta to be summoned, and cursed him, as he stood trembling before her, saying, Become a mortal thou disobedient servant. She cursed also the Gana Malyavan who presumed to intercede on his behalf. Then the two fell at her feet together with Jaya and entreated her to say when the curse would end. And the wife of Siva slowly uttered this speech, A Yaksha named Supratika who has been made a Piseha by the curse of Kubera is residing in the Vindhya forest under the name of Kanabhuti. When thou shalt see him and, calling to mind thy origin, tell him this tale, then, Pushpadanta, thou shalt be released from this curse. And when Malyavan shall hear this tale from Kanabhuti, then Kanabhuti shall be released, and thou, Malyavan, when thou hast published it abroad, shalt be free also. Quote. Having thus spoken, the daughter of the mountain ceased, and immediately those Gyanas disappeared instantaneously like flashes of lightning. Then it came to pass in the course of time that Gauri, full of pity, asked Siva, "My lord, where on the earth have those excellent Pramarthas whom I cursed been born?" And the moon diademed god answered, "My beloved, Pushpadinta has been born under the name of Vararuchi in that great city which is called Kausambi. Moreover, Malyavan also has been born in the splendid city called Supratisthita under the name of Gunadhya. This, goddess, is what has befallen them." Having given her this information with grief caused by recalling to mind the degradation of the servants that had always been obedient to him, that Lord continued to dwell with his beloved in pleasure arbors on the slopes of Mount Kailasa, which were made of the branches of the kalp tree. Katha Sarit Sagara in English Chapter -2. Chapter 2. Then Pushpadinta, wandering on the earth in the form of a man, was known by the name of Vararuchi and Katyayana. Having attained perfection in the sciences, and having served Nanda as minister, being wearied out, he went once on a time to visit the shrine of Durga. And that goddess, being pleased with his austerities, ordered him in a dream to repair to the wilds of the Vindhya to behold Kanabhuti. And as he wandered about there in a waterless and savage wood, full of tigers and apes, he beheld a lofty Nyagrodha tree. And near it he saw, surrounded by hundreds of Pisachas, that Pisacha Kanabhuti, in stature like a shala tree. When Kanabhuti bad seen him and respectfully clasped his feet, Katyayana, sitting down, immediately spake to him, "Thou art an observer of the good custom, how hast thou come into this state?" Having heard this, Kanabhuti said to Katyayana, who bad shown affection towards Bhim, "I know not of myself, but listen to what I heard from Siva at Ujjayini in the place where corpses are burnt, I proceed to tell it thee." The adorable god was asked by Durga, "Whence, my lord, comes thy delight in skulls and burning places?" He thereupon gave this answer. Long ago, when all things had been destroyed at the end of a kalp, the universe became water. I then cleft my thigh and let fall a drop of blood. That drop falling into the water turned into an egg. From that sprung the Supreme Soul, the Disposer. From being proceeded nature, created by me for the purpose of further creation. And they created the other lords of created beings, and those in turn the created beings. For which reason, my beloved, the Supreme Soul is called in the world the Grandfather. Having thus created the world, animate and inanimate, that spirit became arrogant. Thereupon I cut off his bead. Then through regret for what I bad done, I undertook a difficult vow. So thus it comes to pass that I carry skulls in my hand, and love the places where corpses are burned. Moreover, this world resembling a skull, rests in my hand, for the two skull-shaped halves of the egg before mentioned are called heaven and earth. When Siva had thus spoken, I, being full of curiosity, determined to listen, and Parvati again said to her husband, "After how long a time will that Pushpadinta return to us?" Hearing that, Maheshwara spoke to the goddess, pointing me out to her, that Pisakba whom thou beholdest there, was once a Yakaha, a servant of Kuera, the god of wealth, and he had for a friend a Rakshasa named Stulasiras, and the Lord of Wealth, perceiving that be associated with that evil one, banished him to the wilds of the Vindhya mountains. But his brother Dirghajangba fell at the feet of the god, and humbly asked when the curse would end. Then the god of wealth said, "After thy brother has heard the great tale from Pushpadinta, who has been born into this world in consequence of a curse, and after he has in turn told it to Malyavan, who owing to a curse has become a human being, he together with those two Gyanas shall be released from the effects of the curse." Such were the terms on which the god of wealth then ordained that Malyavan should obtain remission from his curse here below, and thou didst fix the same in the case of Pushpadinta. Recall it to mind, my beloved. When I heard that speech of Siva, I came here overjoyed, knowing that the calamity of my curse would be terminated by the arrival of Pushpadinta. When Kanabhuti ceased after telling this story, that moment Vararuchi remembered his origin, and exclaimed like one aroused from sleep, "I am that very Pushpadinta, hear the tale from me." Thereupon Katyayana related to him the 7 great tales in 700,000 verses, and then Kanabhuti said to him, "My lord, thou art an incarnation of Siva, who else knows the story?" Through thy favor that curse has almost left my body. Therefore tell me thy own history from thy birth, thou mighty one, sanctify me yet further, if the narrative may be revealed to such a one as I am. Then Vararuchi, to gratify Kanabhuti, who remained prostrate before him, told all his history from his birth at full length, in the following words. Story of Vararuchi, his teacher Varsha, and his fellow pupils Vyadi and Indraditta. In the city of Kausambi there lived a Brahman called Somaditta, who also had the title of Agnisikha, and his wife was called Vasuditta. She was the daughter of a hermit, and was born into the world in this position in consequence of a curse, and I was born by her to this excellent Brahman, also in consequence of a curse. Now while I was still quite a child my father died, but my mother continued to support me, as I grew up, by severe drudgery. Then one day 2 Brahmans came to our house to stop a night, exceedingly dusty with a long journey, and while they were staying in our house there arose the noise of a tabor. Thereupon my mother said to me, sobbing, as she called to mind her husband, there, my son, is your father's friend Bhavananda, giving a dramatic entertainment. I answered, I will go and see it, and will exhibit the whole of it to you, with a recitation of all the speeches. On hearing that speech of mine, those Brahmans were astonished, but my mother said to them, come, my children, there is no doubt about the truth of what he says. This boy will remember by heart everything that he has heard once. Then they, in order to test me, recited to me a Pratisakhiya. Immediately I repeated the whole in their presence. Then I went with the 2 Brahmans and saw that play, and when I came home, I went through the whole of it in front of my mother. Then one of the Brahmans, named Vyadi, having ascertained that I was able to recollect a thing on hearing it once, told with submissive reverence this tale to my mother. Mother, in the city of Vetasa there were 2 Brahman brothers, Devaswaman and Karambaka, who loved one another very dearly. This Indraditta here is the son of one of them, and I am the son of the other, and my name is Vyadi. It came to pass that my father died. Owing to grief for his loss, the father of Indraditta went on the long journey, and then the hearts of our 2 mothers broke with grief. Thereupon, being orphans though we had wealth, and desiring to acquire learning, we went to the southern region to supplicate the Lord Kartikeya. And while we were engaged in austerities there, the God gave us the following revelation in a dream. There is a city called Pataliputra, the capital of King Nanda, and in it there is a Brahman, named Varsha. From him you shall learn all knowledge, therefore go there. Then we went to that city, and when we made inquiries there, people said to us, there is a blockhead of a Brahman in this town, of the name of Varsha. Immediately we went on with minds in a state of suspense, and saw the house of Varsha in a miserable condition, made a very anthill by mice, dilapidated by the cracking of the walls, untidy, deprived of eaves, looking like the very birthplace of misery. Then, seeing Varsha plunged in meditation within the house, we approached his wife, who showed us all proper hospitality. Her body was emaciated and begrimed, her dress tattered and dirty. She looked like the incarnation of poverty, attracted thither by admiration for the Brahmin virtues. Bending humbly before her, we then told her our circumstances, and the report of her husband's imbecility, which we heard in the city. She exclaimed, my children, I am not ashamed to tell you the truth, listen. I will relate the whole story, and then she, chaste lady, proceeded to tell us the tale which follows. There lived in this city an excellent Brahman, named Sankara Swaman, and he had 2 sons, my husband Varsha, and Upavarsha. My husband was stupid and poor, and his younger brother was just the opposite, and Upavarsha appointed his own wife to manage his elder brother's house. Then in the course of time, the rainy season came on, and at this time the women are in the habit of making a cake of flour mixed with molasses, of an unbecoming and disgusting shape, and giving it to any Brahman who is thought to be a blockhead. And if they act thus, this cake is said to remove their discomfort caused by bathing in the cold season, and their exhaustion caused by bathing in the hot weather. But when it is given, Brahmins refuse to receive it, on the ground that the custom is a disgusting one. This cake was presented by my sister-in-law to my husband, together with a sacrificial fee. He received it, and brought it home with him, and got a severe scolding from me. Then he began to be inwardly consumed with grief at his own stupidity, and went to worship the soul of the foot of the god Kartikeya. The god, pleased with his austerities, bestowed on him the knowledge of all the sciences, and gave him this order: when you findest a Brahman who can recollect what he has heard only once, then thou mayst reveal these. Thereupon my husband returned home delighted, and when he had reached home, told the whole story to me. From that time forth, he has remained continually muttering prayers and meditating. So find you someone who can remember anything after hearing it once, and bring him here. If you do that, you will both of you undoubtedly obtain all that you desire. Having heard this from the wife of Varsha, and having immediately given her 100 gold pieces to relieve her poverty, we went out of that city. Then we wandered through the earth, and could not find anywhere a person who could remember what he had only heard once. At last we arrived tired out at your house today, and have found here this boy, your son, who can recollect anything after once hearing it. Therefore give him us, and let us go forth to acquire the commodity knowledge. Having heard this speech of Vyadi, my mother said with respect, all this tallies completely. I repose confidence in your tale, for long ago at the birth of this my only son dust-necked spiritual voice heareth from heaven. A boy has been born who shall be able to remember what he has heard once. He shall acquire knowledge from Varsha, and shall make the science of grammar famous in the world, and he shall be called Vararuchi by name, because whatever is excellent shall please him. Having uttered this, the voice ceased. Consequently, ever since this boy has grown big, I have been thinking, day and night, where that teacher Varsha can be, and today I have been exceedingly gratified at hearing it from your mouth. Therefore take him with you. What harm can there be in it? He is your brother. When they heard this speech of my mother's, those two, Vyadi and Indraditta, overflowing with joy, thought that night but a moment in length. Then Vyadi quickly gave his own wealth to my mother to provide a feast, and desiring that I should be qualified to read the Vedas, invested me with the Brahmanical thread. Then Vyadi and Indraditta took me, who managed by my own fortitude to control the excessive grief I felt at parting, while my mother in taking leave of me could with difficulty suppress her tears, and considering that the favor of Kartikeya towards them had now put forth blossom, set out rapidly from that city. Then in course of time we arrived at the house of the teacher Varsha. He too considered that I was the favor of Kartikeya arrived in bodily form. The next day he placed us in front of him, and sitting down in a consecrated spot, he began to recite the syllable Om with heavenly voice. This with the 6 supplementary sciences rushed into his mind, and then he began to teach them to us. Then I retained what the teacher told us after hearing it once, Vyadi after hearing it twice, and Indraditta after hearing it 3 times. Then the Brahmins of the city, hearing of a sudden the divine sound, came at once from all quarters with wonder stirring in their breasts to see what this new thing might be, and with their reverent mouths loud in his praises honored Varsha with low bows. Then beholding that wonderful miracle, not only Upavarsha, but all the citizens of Pataliputra kept high festival. Moreover the king Nanda of exalted fortune, seeing the power of the boon of the son of Siva, was delighted, and immediately filled the house of Varsha with wealth, showing him every mark of respect.